We're going to be talking about the key design elements, and I think this is one of the most important sections of our course. And the first of these elements is the topic of colors. So let's just jump into it. It can be quite complicated, but let's make it simple. First of all, colors should attract, just like in nature. And colors are more than decoration. They have to have a sort of a meaning in your presentation. Also, keep in mind that colors should contrast. And as all the design elements, they are here to help you highlight your message and make it easier to your audience to understand what you want to say. But above all, colors should be used purposefully. In other words, they should be there because you want that specific color there and not because it was a random choice. Now let's see a few examples of how colors can be quite significantly powerful and the reason why they are one of the key design elements. See the colors here. There are many colors in this slide. And not only you can use colors to highlight stuff, but you can also take them off. See how now the only colorful objects in this slide are the ones that pop out of the screen. And you can play with that a lot. Let's say that the bigger cell type is the one that you want to talk about. This is a great way to highlight it. I know this looks obvious, but people definitely overlook this stuff. If you understand what message you want to convey, and if in this case it's about the first cell type there, then you would be doing a great job grabbing your attention's audience towards it. But in the case it's another cell type, you can also do it. You see how powerful it can be? Let's just go for another example. Here, this picture is not super colorful or anything like that. But still, if you want to highlight something, let's say the title, then maybe it's a good idea to not have any color in the picture, so definitely your title stands out. And the same goes if you want to give attention to a specific part of your image. I know that you get the concept now. Now let's just take a look at the vocabulary of colors. And understanding these terms will help you make more informed decisions, especially when choosing colors for your presentation. Hue is the most basic form of a color. It's a color's purest identity, independent of other values such as lightness, darkness, saturation. Hues are what comes to mind when we think of colors in its purest forms. And here are a few examples of the colors that you know. Now, red, yellow, and blue are the so-called primary colors, and most likely you already know that. And these are the colors that cannot be recreated by mixing other colors. And the secondary colors, you also probably know those. By just mixing the primary colors, you get them. Orange, green, and purple. All the other colors are called intermediate colors, and they result from mixing a primary with a secondary or multiple secondaries, and that's the concept. Other concepts that you should know. Shades is the amount of black added to a hue, and tint is the amount of white added. Now, see how when you convert hue to grayscale, you can see its value. And the value refers to the inherent lightness or darkness of a color. And the value of different colors can be compared relative to a black and white gradient. So black has the highest value and white has the lowest. And why are these important? Because values become crucial for you to know when choosing color combinations that can contrast well with each other. It's all about contrast. That's how you create powerful messages using colors. And another simple concept that you should know is saturation. And basically is the more saturated a color is, the closer to its hue, to its purest form it is. And the less saturated it is, the more converted to grayscale it is. Meaning that if a color is completely desaturated, it is in its grayscale. Having these concepts in mind, we can take a look at choosing color combinations. And this choice will impact your presentation as a whole. It will affect the tone of the slides and how your audience perceives relationships. And you'll see what I'm saying right now. Just keep in mind that you shouldn't be picking colors at random. One great tool that you can use is color.adobe.com. And there you can select a color and check the monochromatic box, and that tool will give you a few colors for you to use. So for example, we gave them our blue, the blue that we've been always using the whole course. This dark blue that is the color of the title right there, right now. And you see that the other color recommended, we can use it in a graph. The advantage of choosing a monochromatic palette is that it creates a consistent, unified look to your presentation. It's much more uniform. And see how I would be using the same colors, not only for letters, but also in my graphs, and to highlight whatever I want to point out in the graph. An example of a slide that uses monochromatic to its advantage is this one. See how it uses the accent color in order to get your attention to the word colder? You can also choose the complementary palette, and that would be two hues on the opposite side of the color wheel. This can be used when your strategy is to enhance the difference between two categories, because by using these colors you make them seem opposite. Here's an example of how your graphs would look like, but a more practical example would be this one. See how the message that I want to convey here is about winter and summer. And in order to highlight even more the difference between these two seasons, you can use complementary colors. And at last, you can choose an analogous palette, and that will give you 2 or 3 hues that are relatively close together in the color wheel. And this is when you want to combine both elements of the monochromatic and the complementary, because you still achieve a consistent, harmonious look, but also with the possibility to have a stronger accent color. And this is an example. You can also use the darker end of your choices to make your contrast work. And this slide would be a good example of how to use it. Basically, these are different degrees of the same category, let's say. So in case your presentation goes in these lines, then choosing an analogous color palette would be the way to go. Now, talking about emotional associations with colors, that's something that we all kind of know, but not really put in practice. So I want to remind you guys that every color has an emotion attached to it. And this is important because you are making emotional connections when you're presenting. And colors are a way for you to transmit emotions, whether you like it or not. So keep in mind that when you look at this, you see that the color white gives you this sense of pure, simple, spacious. Now yellow would be more cheerful, right? More optimistic, maybe a bit dry. Orange, fruity, fun. Rustic for brown, maybe earthy, cozy. What do you think now about pink? It's soft, isn't it? It's delicate, maybe sweet. And if you have everything in red, it shouts love, hate, maybe hot or stop signal. You might remember of blood, heart. Is it something that you want your audience to feel during a presentation? I would say definitely avoid it. Now green would be the more natural, maybe healthy, whereas blue gives you this peaceful, calm feeling. And for me, it's my favorite color, so I would always recommend using it. But this is my personal opinion. When it comes to purple, artistic, maybe even a bit creative, I would say. It's not often used, but I don't see why not. And black is the classic one, right? It's powerful and more formal, maybe I'd say classy. So keep in mind about these feelings and make your decisions taking them into account. And we wanted to share here also in order for you to know how computers specify colors. And this can be quite important for you to know. And there are 3 different ways that the computer can specify colors. The first is the CMYK, which uses a combination of cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. The most known one, I would say, which is the RGB, red, green, blue. This is what PowerPoint uses. And it determines the color by having a range from 0 to 255 for each of these 3 colors in order to create and achieve the color that you want. And there's the hex format. And the only thing that you need to know in terms of these formats and the way that they are specified by computers is that the first one is specifically for printed documents. So know that when you send out your poster, the colors that appear in your PowerPoint are not going to be processed the same as the colors that will appear in your poster. Most likely the place that you send out your poster to be printed will have to transform your colors into this format in order to print it. And that's why we recommend you printing your poster in a small sheet of paper first, so you can see if the colors look alright. And as I said before, RGB are more often used as the standard format for PowerPoint files, for example, whereas hex is the most dominant form in websites and applications. Now let's talk about colors to avoid, and I already told you guys red is the one, especially writing text in red. It's always a bad idea. So make sure you don't use it. Maybe an arrow or a circle to highlight something, but that's all. Also, interestingly enough, most of the standard colors in PowerPoint are extremely ineffective in your presentation, are actually ones to avoid. They are bright ones, such as this yellow, so try not using them at all. And avoid red and green. This is the most common form of color blindness, and you don't want to make it difficult to anyone in your audience to follow your presentation, right? With all that said, what then? Well, we recommend that when you're about to choose the colors of your slides, the colors of your presentation, the first thing that you have to do is choose a main color. And maybe you can color pick your institution's logo and get the color from there. That can add consistency and make it look branded. And by using the tool that I told you guys about, or even using just common sense, you get a variation for it. And I would recommend getting something a little bit darker or a little bit lighter than your main color. And you might also want an accent color, one to break the pattern for when you want to really highlight something. And there you go. With that, you're more than prepared to start designing your presentation. And keep in mind, you can always use black and white. This will be always good for backgrounds and text. And you can also use any gray in between. For palette suggestions, I'd recommend for you to go to our Instagram account, Design for Scientists, and you're going to be finding there great tips in terms of color palettes. And that's it. That's everything that you need to know in terms of colors. I hope you enjoy. And again, if you have any doubt, make sure you comment below, and we will be here